And it's BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And some of you will recognize the very familiar background here. I am now back in the Philippines. I had to say goodbye to the state of West Virginia, but I did have the opportunity to go through some new places. I went through Japan coming in here to the Philippines. First time I really had to go out and explore some things. And I would like to say hello to everybody. And there are going to be a couple different things that I'm going to explore in this True Crime Talk Radio episode. Firstly, I would just like to say that you might also notice it's the first time using this type of headset microphone. And anybody who is listening right now, give the feedback. Can you hear me all right and everything? As well as the internet has changed a little bit here in the Philippines, but I'm actually only going to be here for 5 days, then moving on to the city of Macau. This is going to be a shorter True Crime Talk radio episode. And the first thing I would like to say is that for the next Zodiac Monday, I'm going to be doing an episode on the book Unsolved Murders, Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac by Patrick Auerbach. And that's a book that I've wanted to talk to you guys about for a while. Now, some of you longtime Black Box Online Radio listeners will recognize the title, or on Zodiac Monday, you may have seen the image going by on the screen for the Zodiac and Jack the Ripper book by Patrick Auerbach. And the honest answer is, I read the free sample from Kindle, and it's a book that discusses the suspects in both cases. And I'm going to be using it for next week's source material for Zodiac Monday and Ripper Wednesday. And the reason why I wanted to come back to that one is I'm always a little bit hesitant about these books that are just giving commentary on the suspects, because there's so many sources out there that allow you to more or less already hear commentary and perspectives on the Zodiac suspects. So I first want to just ask one more time, can everyone hear me okay? Drop something in the chat, please, if you can hear everything. And even though I had some hesitations about reading the book by Patrick Auerbach, I also just wanted to know more. I had to admit that I had a certain amount of curiosity about the case and about all of the observations that he was going to make, and talking about the different suspects in both Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac. So I'm going to be discussing all of that on the next Zodiac Monday. All right, everybody says that they can hear things okay. First time using this headset microphone, so just wanted to see how that goes. I think that this is almost just like going into Bizarro world, because in the past I was like much closer to the thing, and I had the microphone on the stand, and everything just looks so different. And I mean, the smallest things can throw you off a little bit. But first, I would like to say hello to Libia's, hello to Classic Chevy Cat, Steve Allen, and you guys are all amazing. Steve Allen says, I'm up at 6 a.m. just to hear the live. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. Now, this is going to be a True Crime Talk Radio episode. It's a segment that I do on Black Box Online Radio where I talk about many subjects within a single episode. And there's been a lot of true crime news lately. And you can put anything in the comments section and anything in the live chat here that you would like discussed. But just to respond to one thing real fast, I did a short episode last year about Danny Masterson, who was an actor on that 70s show, as well as starring in some other movies. And he was, of course, arrested and convicted for sex crimes. Absolutely horrible individual. And we all learned about that way too late. But he was sentenced to 30 years in prison, and a hit was taken out on his life. I just saw a YouTube episode about this. A hit was taken out on his life. And then he actually had two prison guards escorting him when he was walking in the prison. And then he was still jumped and attacked by two other guards. And it just turned out to be a very nasty situation. And he was actually transferred from the prison to what's called a men's colony, which is something that I'm not extremely familiar with. However, though, and this is a big however, he is only months into his 30-year prison sentence. Who knows what's going to be happening next? But Charlie is here saying, glad you're back. We missed you. Thank you so much, Charlie. Come on in. And some other pieces of true crime news out there relate to Gypsy Rose Blanchard. I did a live stream once about her, and Gypsy Rose Blanchard was, of course, convicted for second-degree murder with the mother with her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, for the murder of her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard. And it was a very, very strong story of abuse and a lot of negligence that took place, and just flat out somebody abusing someone else for profit, for selfishness, and for indifference to their well-being. And Gypsy Rose Blanchard retaliated by having a man named Nick Godejohn murder her mother. She spent 10 years in prison and she was released. And you may have seen all the media footage of her walking around with her husband, and she went shoe shopping on her first day out of prison. And I was thinking about that, shoe shopping. I mean, to each his own, right? To each her own. But I don't know if that's the first thing I would do after getting out of prison for 10 years behind bars. But she's already left her husband. Again, it hasn't even been a year, and she's already left the guy, and she's now with somebody else, someone else whom she had connected with when she was in prison. And here's the final piece of commentary on that. Here's the final note on that subject. And that is that Gypsy Rose Blanchard is a woman who has a very sad history of using people. She was a real victim of abuse. She was someone who was genuinely hurt by Dee Dee Blanchard. There's a reason why she had her mother murdered, as terrible as that sounds. But the man who murdered her mother was Nick Godejohn. And as soon as they realize that they're both going to jail, she's just like, peace, see ya, bye, sayonara. And then they're having separate trials. She wants nothing to do with him. It's more or less he did something for her, and now she's no longer with him. And I was watching the video series about Gypsy Rose Blanchard on Adam McIntyre's channel, and this is where I saw the update that she had already left her husband. So I was just immediately thinking all of these same things. And even Adam McIntyre said that in his live stream when he's like, all right, maybe you were married to a guy that when you were in prison, you needed somebody to buy shampoo for you. You needed somebody to buy ramen noodles for you and so on. Or there can be certain elements of support that someone would need when they are in prison. Now, as soon as they are out of prison, that's that. That's all. And like, she's now already with somebody else, someone whom she had been connecting with. And Phil Thomas is here. He says, first live segment, very cool. Well, hello, Phil. Feel free to put anything in the chat if you want. If you want to discuss any particular subject, if anybody has any exact true crime question. And so the final note on Gypsy Rose Blanchard is, I think that she just has a bad habit of using people to get what she wants because she was a victim of abuse, and maybe she's not completely aware of how and why these things are immoral, or just because you have an objective or an ambition, or there's something that she's trying to accomplish, that doesn't necessarily mean that she can sacrifice the well-being of another person just for her own personal benefit. And we have a comment that has come in here from Classic Chevy Cat who says, you have to wonder about the men who attach themselves to her. Well, Classic Chevy Cat, that's what Adam McIntyre was getting into in his live stream when he was saying just that this guy, these men, plural, they don't necessarily know a whole lot about her, just that she was convicted of second-degree murder for having her mother murdered. And they're like, I'm going to be her boyfriend. Well, like, I mean, do you even know what her favorite color is? It's probably something like crystal or aqua. I'm just guessing. But, like, do you know any of the details about her personal life other than what you've seen in the media about how she had her mother murdered because she was the victim of abuse, and then they just immediately want to attach themselves to her? Now, it could be curiosity. I mean, I run a true crime channel here. I'm not going to lie. I would love to interview Gypsy Rose Blanchard. I have so many questions about things that haven't been mentioned in the media. And I also just would want her take on certain things, as well as just to discuss everything that I have said to you for the last 5 minutes about her actions and behaviors toward people like Nick Godejohn or her most recent husband, ex-husband. And there can be certain types of fascinations that people have with famous people, those who are in the media. There can be fascinations that they have with people whom they believe are dangerous. And the worst thing is, I don't think any of the men whom I've discussed so far would be intimidated or threatened by Gypsy Rose Blanchard. I instead think it's more about how they just see this as an opportunity. The criminals that get accused of attracting people because they are dangerous are the individuals like Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, who just built somewhat of a cult following, or even when you have women writing letters to Nicholas Cruz in prison, the Parkland shooter from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. So the fact that, people have any type of fascination with him at all, I think that goes to show that sometimes people do have these types of bizarre connections. Richard Mills says, wondering about people who want relationships with people like Charles Manson. Well, especially Charles Manson. I know he has that West Virginia charm going for him. That was one thing that he had. But people really had a different type of experience with Charles Manson. And with him, it was all about how he was almost able to talk in his hypnotic, kind of chaotic sing-song way. Now, a child doesn't know what terrible is. And Dr. Todd Grande described Charles Manson as somebody who was not charismatic, but extremely confident. And I think about that all the time. I think about other people that I meet who have that type of personality where I'm like, they might not be charismatic, just extremely confident, and people can be attracted to that type of confidence. And let's not kid ourselves. Somebody like Charles Manson put on a show, a spectacle. Some people found him to be very entertaining. Some people found him to be very engaging. But I had the opportunity to interview Brian Davis, who hosts the Tate LaBianca radio program. And what he said about Manson was that he didn't even think that Manson wanted to be a rock star, to have a major record deal. He thought that Manson was already living the dream, that he just wanted to be sitting around the campfire, playing the guitar. He already has access to women, like access to sexual partners. He already has a place to live, and he has the opportunity to entertain people by playing his 4 or 5 chords on the guitar and just singing his own stuff. He didn't need anything more than that. I think there's a certain defendable quality to this. But if you just want to ask why are people attracted to Charles Manson, it's possible that Manson learned a lot of this stuff in prison about Scientology and how to use certain persuasion tactics to talk in that type of hypnotic way. And I do mean that, hypnotic, not just being an overly persuasive and confident person. Now we've gone to a higher level. This person is almost just borderline brainwashing people, and that's why they thought Manson was a cult leader. But Manson said that he was not the leader of any type of cult. He's like, there was no cult, there was no Manson family. It's just we live together, and he's just the guy who plays the songs around the campfire, and girls liked him because of his singing voice and so on. And Libius is here, and it says, did you see the new book, The Allen Files by John Bowman? It has ALA's naval records. Oh, no, I did not. But thank you so much for sharing that with me, Libius. I would love to read something like that, a book on Arthur Lee Allen, because I've also been in contact and corresponding with someone who believes that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac killer. And he just told me that he's going to write a bigger presentation for this, write out a whole series of points that people haven't really discussed previously about why he thinks that the Zodiac was Arthur Lee Allen. And I'm just saying, bring it on. Bring it on. We're going to keep discussing him until we have some reason not to. And I just mentioned Patrick Auerbach's book at the beginning of this. Yeah, he has a suspect profile on Arthur Lee Allen. Of course he does. So we can look at other people's observations and find out where they're going with all of this. But yeah, I would love to read anything about the naval records and so on. And Richard Mills says, wasn't he caught trafficking women and released as if he was an informant? Oh, you're talking about Charles Manson. Well, Tom O'Neill, author of Chaos, definitely believes that Charles Manson was an informant. But the thing that I always bring up is when I was listening to the show Dialogue Conspiracy, which was hosted by Mae Brussel in the 1960s, she was talking about these same things, that Manson was an informant for someone trafficking women. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Now, I'm not familiar with those specific details, and I can tell you exactly what Manson was doing on what days that would have caused these human trafficking incidents, but I do think that that is highly possible. And I also have one more announcement for you guys, and I don't mean to just be kind of jumping all over the map, but that's what True Crime Talk Radio is all about. For years on this channel, Black Box Online Radio, I've done the Anything Goes Friday segment, and that's when any subject is fair game. But for tomorrow, I'm going to launch the first ever Cooper Friday segment. For an extended period of time, I'm thinking about doing more episodes on DB Cooper, simply because this is something that I had wanted to do in the past, never quite got around to it. And like Zodiac Monday and Ripper Wednesday, I'm going to be taking requests, but I really just want to explore the material like anybody else. That's what I do on Black Box Online Radio. And the first episode is all going to be about me as a newcomer looking at DB Cooper. I've done 4 or 5 episodes about DB Cooper, and that's it. Everything that I could possibly tell you about DB Cooper from before now is contained in those episodes. And this is going to be starting from the ground up and moving onward. And believe it or not, I actually did a lot of that with Ripper Wednesday, starting in somewhat of a similar way, because I did my first Jack the Ripper episode in 2019. Then I did one in 2021, almost a year and a half later. 2022 had a couple. And then in 2023, I did a regular segment about Jack the Ripper. So the whole journey is there. You can hear it all. And if you're curious about that, you can tune in to Cooper Friday tomorrow and share all of your observations about the DB Cooper case, anything that you guys think about that. And of course, hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Steve Allen has another comment about Charles Manson, and it says, I wonder if Manson also learned from Mormonism and Joseph Smith. Now, the person you need to talk to about that is Howard Davis, author of the Zodiac Manson Connection, because not only is he a Manson researcher, he's also kind of an amateur historian of the Mormon Church. He wrote an alternative history of the Mormon and so on. I don't mean to put words in his mouth. He might not even want me calling his material that, but that is more or less how it has been presented. And Howard Davis has written a lot about the Mormon Church. Now, these are the things that I have learned from some types of similar channels online that discuss this subject. And that is that there are all types of persuasion tactics and hypnotic tactics that are used by people who have left the Mormon Church, and they learn things from the religious leaders. And I don't mean to affect anybody's religious thinking. This is just some stuff that has been shared on channels like Marvelous Work and a Wonder, as well as by the Real Illuminati. That's the name of the group. Nothing more than a name. And what they're saying is just that it's about slowly revealing the message. First, you just kind of talk about something in a way that the person can only halfway understand, and then you slowly add in just a little bit more information, and you just say, that thing that happened in 1987 just changed my life. Then you change the subject and start talking about something else, about what truth is. I learned that truth meant something to me that it won't mean to you unless I tell you what my truth is. And then you're like, well, come on, where are you going with this? Where are you going with this? And after 6 months, you're just completely hooked. You're like, all right, I really like listening to you. And Marvelous Work and a Wonder talked about that all the time. Now we have something here from Richard Mills. Someone wrote a book claiming that E. Howard Hunt was D.B. Cooper, and Steve says E. Howard looks just like the first Cooper sketch. Yes, he is one of the few D.B. Cooper suspects that I've done a YouTube short about, only because I read a book about E. Howard Hunt called Bond of Secrecy. That was actually a request for the Anything Goes Friday segment. E. Howard Hunt was a CIA spy operative, and definitely someone who could have pulled off something like the Cooper hijacking mentally. Now, did he actually commit that specific skyjacking? Well, I'm definitely not seeing a lot of mainstream support for this type of theory. I found that the E. Howard Hunt theory is mostly dismissed as some type of far-out conspiracy, but I mean, I always want to hear more, and he would have to be a suspect that I could do a bigger suspect profile on, simply for the fact that I have just a little bit of familiarity with him outside of the traditional DB Cooper realm. And Super Strike is here. Morning, Ned. I saw that Ken Main's Unsolved No More YouTube channel is gone. Wonder what happened. Oh, Super Strike. I didn't know about that, but I did a book discussion on Unsolved No More by Ken Mains. And, I just picked up my phone and I got some notifications from YouTube. And it was just during one 60-minute period, like, there were just 80 people watched that live stream out of nowhere, and then it went back down to 0. And, it's not the most thorough book discussion that I did on Unsolved No More, but I was wondering, just that's odd. That's just, a very weird anomaly in the YouTube traffic that would come into my channel. Unsolved No More is the title of the book by Ken Baines, as well as the name of his YouTube channel. And I did not even know that his YouTube channel was taken down, but I'm not surprised based on what I said about the YouTube data. Some things that I did say during my book discussion on Unsolved No More were that in some recent episodes from last year, Ken Maines was very upset. He expressed a lot of frustration to the true crime audience. He was tired of getting weird questions about some of the things that aren't even just like, okay, here's a different type of DB Cooper suspect. Not like that I was just talking about. All right, just weigh the merit of the idea. Like more and more bizarre things about how, like, the example he brought up was that Adam Walsh, the son of John Walsh from America's Most Wanted, was actually still alive and living under a different name, and he was just shouting and screaming on his YouTube channel once, and he said he wanted to focus on cold cases. And Super Strike says, I know, it's weird. He had a decent number of subs, over 100,000. Oh, yes, yes. And he had some good graphics. Like his intro was very well done on Unsolved No More. And he used to have Bill Noguera on his show all the time, and they would do some types of interview things. And I mean, it was a good YouTube channel. And I always said that I was a bigger fan of the Unsolved No More YouTube channel, more so than Ken Maines' show, The Hunt for the Zodiac Killer. Now, Steve Allen has something about DB Cooper. He says, Ned, you need to interview Darren Schaefer about DB Cooper. I love that guy. Yeah, absolutely. Bring it on. Cooper Friday segment. All right, Steve, I'm going to make a mental note of that and just going to try and put a lot of things together. And some other people have talked to me about doing DB Cooper episodes as being a guest on the program. I'm like, sure, bring it on. And I will just hope this headset microphone holds up. Now, as I said, I wanted to test this thing out. I feel like I'm wearing some type of piece of plastic that's held together by two rubber bands. I think this thing is just about going to snap in any second. So if you tune into any future live streams or interviews, I might be wearing a completely different headset. And Libya says, are you going to Macau to work in the gambling industry? No, but I have nothing against the gambling industry. I am actually going to work for a school, but I've definitely looked into it a lot because there are a lot of opportunities in the casinos in Macau, and just going to stay away from the whole organized crime thing for the best. Oh, and Super Strike says something about Ken Maines. He didn't like the comments on his YouTube channel. I didn't like that he turned the comments section off. I mean, he is a lot more professional than I am. As I said, Ken Maines ran the YouTube channel Unsolved No More. And I was just listening back to my live stream, as I said, because I received that bump in the traffic. And what did I say in the episode? He has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, a master's degree in forensic criminology. He's a real life detective. He is ex-Marine Corps. So he's not just like some guy like me who's just sitting around exploring different ideas on the internet. And I think that a lot of the more far out, wackier things that I don't mind discussing really bothered him. And that could be one of the reasons why he deleted the YouTube channel. And I do remember something from his rant video. He said that one case that particularly bothered him was the Idaho quadruple homicide. And that is one that I haven't even really explored. What was the perpetrator's name? Brian Koberger. And he just got a bunch of weird conspiracy questions about how everybody thought that it was some type of front operation, and he just thought that they had no credibility and didn't want to entertain them. And, that's just kind of is what it is. And Melissa Tappa is here. Melissa Tappa, the webmaster for ZodiacKillerBomb.com. She says, good morning, just joined. Ken said that his channel was hacked. He's working on getting it back. Okay. That would really suck about getting your channel hacked and deleted. I just thought he might have been frustrated with it. But I really can't even imagine that. And, at first, I wouldn't have been bothered at all if Black Box Online Radio had been deplatformed, like the way a lot of other famous people get deplatformed. I'm sure you're thinking of some names right now coming to mind. But there was a YouTuber out there named Stefan Molyneux who started in like 2006, I think. And, I watched some of his content. I went through a phase where I watched his videos. Then he got deplatformed. And he was able to appear on someone else's channel almost kind of like as a sock puppet account. It's obviously just his video in his studio saying, 14 years of my life, thousands of videos all gone. See, for me, 7 years of my life, there are more than 1,600 episodes of Black Box Online Radio, and yeah, I would probably feel it now if this channel were deplatformed. But the thing is, though, you can't just give in to the crap that the YouTube censored push. I told you that, like, I made another channel called Switchforce Media, which is going to be part of a larger project that got deleted and shut down already before I even uploaded a single video. I just made the account and they shut it down. They're saying this is suspicious. I'm like, I haven't done anything yet. It's just it's just another channel. And the YouTube censors are horrible. And I just, we can't be on that side and let them win. And we also have one from Super Strike saying it's Ken's channel. He can do what he wants, just in my opinion. Richard says, I think your show is well done and enjoyable. Well, thank you, Richard. And I've definitely been trying to put out several different types of content. Almost every day on Black Box Online Radio, I try to release shorts talking about any type of true crime case. I just put one out on the murder of Kitty Genovese, who was the woman whose murder unfortunately inspired the 911 call and emergency number system that we have now, because of the time it took the authorities to get there. But mostly I've been talking about serial killers lately on the Black Box Online Radio shorts that come out every day. And you guys know that I've done interviews in the past in Zodiac Monday, which is more or less just me ranting and raving about the Zodiac killer. And one more time, feel free to tune into the book discussion on Unsolved Murders, The Zodiac and Jack the Ripper by Patrick Auerbach. Do you guys notice that every time I say the title of his book, I flip Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac? Unsolved Murders, Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac. Or is it Unsolved Murders, the Zodiac and Jack the Ripper? I'm not sure. But there's another reason why I wanted to read that one. And there's a book out there called Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer by Zed Simpson, which I've read and discussed on Zodiac Monday. And that book didn't really quite do it for me. I hadn't really quite found anything that truly explored the Zodiac Ripper connections. So that's why I wanted to read Patrick Auerbach's book. And David Ward is here, and he says, everyone listens and hears different theories. It's hard to corral them in. Yeah, it's hard. Absolutely, it's hard. And sometimes, though, you can just weigh someone's theory on the merits, even though you disagree with it completely. And Melissa Tappa says Ken Maines thinks that the hack on his channel was intentional. If the whole thing was deleted, I would expect so. If it's just like an unintentional hack or something, wouldn't it just be messed up, or like all the titles might be scrambled or something like that? If everything's been deleted, or, I mean, I shouldn't really comment too much. You guys are sharing all of this. And Richard says, did you ever see the series on YouTube years ago about the Stefano serial killers and programmed assassins? It had over 100 episodes. No, I didn't see that one, Richard, but somebody made a request to talk about that for one of the YouTube shorts. 100 episodes going to be condensed down into a 60-minute short? All right. I'll try my best. And, you know, it still is a challenge, but I think that those shorts are improving from last year when I started making them and putting them out regularly. So it is a challenge, but let's see where that goes. And as far as this goes, Melissa says they go through all the security measures, and Super Strike says, Ned, your guess is as good as mine. I'm borderline computer illiterate. Super Strike, well, I'm a computer hacker from the Philippines, so I'll answer any questions that you have later on. But yes, also, I mean, people, please take this time to share anything you want to say about the Zodiac Killer, DB Cooper, and Jack the Ripper. Those are going to be the three cases I'm going to be exploring the most. But as you see on True Crime Talk Radio, you can talk about absolutely anything that you want. Any subject's fair game. I'm going to be trying to put these live streams out as well as I can. Got to assess the internet situation in Macau, but I think that it's going to be working pretty well. And if you want to support all of these efforts, you can go over to BuyMeACoffee.com, BuyMeACoffee.com/BlackBoxNed88, and that allows you to make a donation or contribution to help support the show. And anybody who makes a donation will get a shout out on Zodiac Monday. And Melissa says, LOL, Ned, hacker from the Philippines, too funny. I mean, I can't even keep my microphone together on the headset for too long. I don't even know how to deal with software, let alone hardware. I just didn't really grow up as someone who wanted to know the ins and outs of computers. When I was growing up in the 90s, it was more like, okay, we have this thing called MS Paint. I can take my mouse and I can click something, and now I can fill a square and make it blue. Oh, now I can do it again and make it red. Now teal. I didn't even know what teal was. How about cyan? And that was all I really learned about computers. It's just whatever was like basic and entertaining. And one thing that I really thought about though, growing up in the '90s, is we had all types of computer games that I would never ever expect a kid to play with now, because they were all just about, very basic things like MS Paint, like moving different colors around, like computer coloring books. And we had this little Mickey Mouse game that was so simple and basic. You just kind of walk around and Mickey can eat stuff. And I was like 5, so that wasn't so bad. And Super Strike says, I'm the same way. I was never interested in the inner workings of computers. I've had computers since the 80s when I was a kid. Okay, I think that they're fascinating. I think that there's a lot of things that I wish I knew about them. I'm just not technologically inclined. And this is going to get to one point with Black Box Online Radio where I'm just going to have to admit that I'm not someone who is a brilliant video editor. And a lot of those channels that are bigger than mine hire professional editors, or they have one on the staff, or they just have somebody who's responsible for the amazing graphics and so on. And I'm finally at the point where I don't think that that's such a bad idea. And let's see, we have one from Richard Mills says, it seems most of us are somewhat computer illiterate. Mine is a jukebox entertainment system. Oh, do you have a real jukebox, Richard? That's pretty cool if you do. And I don't know if you're playing vinyls and that thing. Some people have the jukeboxes that use CDs. All of that's welcome. And I mean, that's the best way to listen to music. So as far as just the way that we share entertainment and content, the jukebox is amazing. Records, CDs, cassettes, those were all great ways to share music. And you even had this bigger connection to it. However, with YouTube, one thing I do love is everything gets condensed. The YouTube censors were pissing me off with all of their weird bans and deletions and their problems when you're just using ordinary language and then they just blow up. But YouTube has been a great place to just hear an entire album from a band that you used to listen to on a CD. Now the whole thing's online, and the band is still getting their money. The record company is still getting their money. They have their whole system put in place. And let's talk about true crime. You can also get access to all types of true crime content, and it can be a blend of studio-generated content, high-end YouTubers content, and then the smaller things like Black Box Online Radio that you find in the dark corners of cyberspace. So there really is a very central place for everything. And I do think that there's something wonderful about that. But I'm starting to feel like a dinosaur or something when I look at some of these YouTube videos that are 18 years old. And I'm just like, it feels like it was just yesterday. And Super Strike says, I like how your channel and videos are, Ned. Reminds me of old time YouTube. Oh, yes, I miss the old time YouTube so much, Super Strike, where there were just people who just sit down in front of the camera. Sometimes you'd even see them walking over and then they would just kind of flop down. Okay, yes, hello, this is my channel, and you can hit the like button there. No, wait, it was over here. I don't know. And they would just talk to in the webcam for about 10 minutes. And YouTube has evolved so much where, I mean, there's so many channels out there that just have the amazingly well done graphics. And there's some channels that are almost on par with studio generated television. And I was watching one thing, I think it was from vidIQ, when they were just saying that's going to be the future. You're going to see TV shows that are just as good as anything that NBC or CBS is going to put out. And then they're just going to be available on YouTube, made by people in their own garage studio, but they're going to look like they're done by professional creators. I love it. Bring it on. And we have a super chat from Queen City Stripes. QCS, welcome, and thank you so much for the super chat. That is really good news. I appreciate that. QCS is the person who brought Donald L. Blanco forward as a Zodiac killer suspect. Donald L. Blanco was a financial analyst and former member of the Coast Guard that lived in San Francisco at the time of the Zodiac murders, and QCS used a really interesting method to try and catch the Zodiac killer. Shout out to you. And that was by putting the Zodiac Killer's possible name combination into a database using a computer program. It was based on Python, right, QCS, and that revealed the name Donald L. Blinko. First, QCS tried to solve it by finding a name with 13 letters in it, because the Zodiac's My Name Is cipher has 13 symbols, but not going in the normal order, like reversing the order of the letters, and the name Donald L. Blinko matched up. And QCS, I've done one episode, and I did a Q&A session also about Donald L. Blinko as a Zodiac suspect. I can't encourage you enough to keep trying, and I'm really curious about your investigations and what process you would have with contacting the authorities. And as Melissa knows, she's in the chat here, it's difficult to get direct responses. And earlier today, maybe 5 hours before this live stream, somebody contacted me and they said, Ned, I have a problem. And I'm like, well, what is it? I know the truth about the Zodiac Killer, but I can't get the world to listen to me. And I'm just like, it's an uphill battle. And a lot of people have some similar experiences where they, believe that they have solved the Zodiac mystery, but they aren't completely sure how to present their material to the general public. And they're honest people. They honestly believe that their suspect is worthy of consideration by law enforcement. And some even go beyond that. And they think that this is the guy. This is the person who was responsible for the murders in 1968 and 69. And there's also a person who's been a guest on this program in the past named Eddie McNamara, and he just posted on Facebook that he is closer and closer to making a big discovery in the Zodiac mystery. Now, some of you will remember that Eddie McNamara is a supporter of the Zodiac hoax theory in a little bit of a different way than Thomas Henry Horan's Myth of the Zodiac Killer book and documentary. But Eddie McNamara does believe that the Zodiac wasn't a single person, that these were unconnected murders that were united by a set of letters and cryptograms that were written. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is he just happened to say that he is closer to making a big discovery that will prove it. I always listen to people, and I will always hear anybody out. And we have a comment here. Oh, the series of videos on Ken Mains' channel was great, in my opinion, and Classic Heavy Cat says that she also watched all of those. And Phil Thomas says, love yours. How's the thanks for the shout out? Oh, Phil Thomas, yes, well, welcome in, and big shout out to you. Well, yes, I'm hoping that Ken Mains will get his channel back if he didn't actually want it to be deleted. And I think that some of his videos on serial killers were absolutely excellent, talking about things that aren't only about the Zodiac, but just about the experiences of serial killers. Because, as I said, I'm just some guy who's a true crime follower. I just used to listen to a bunch of true crime podcasts and YouTube videos, and he was a real-life detective, not only investigating cold cases, he was a narcotics officer as well, and he's done all kinds of things firsthand. So that's one thing that I think, is not only admirable. Of course, it's admirable, but you also want to know the perspective of someone who is actually working on the front lines, who's actually working with law enforcement, as a member of law enforcement, and what are their experiences. And as I said, I think the honest ones is just that it pisses him off. However, I've also read the book Homicide, The View from Inside the Yellow Tape by Cloyd Steiger, and that one wasn't so much talking about how he's pissed off at different types of true crime theories. Instead, he just shares his takes on the subject, and so many murder investigations are in that book, Homicide, The View from Inside the Yellow Tape. And I've talked about it on a lot of the Zodiac Killer news reports. Hey, Manny Grossman is here. Manny, how you doing? And Manny says, Ned, when you get a chance to check out my file on Billy the Artist series, I guess it just says check out my Billy the Artist series, you should take a look. The guy trolled Maury Terry for drug money. Maury called him a crucial eyewitness. Oof, Manny, as soon as I'm done with this live stream, I'm going to head over right there now, because Maury Terry is somebody who wasted a lot of our time, and Manny has really put in a lot of effort to try and demonstrate all of that. And I've noticed that the longer that my Son of Sam episodes stay on the internet and here on YouTube, the more comments come in just kind of trash-talking things related to Manny and just saying, Ned, you can't listen to him. Manny's paid by the Carr family. he's just a disinfo agent and saying all of these things that aren't true. And it's not just coming from one place. It's all of these types of random comments. Some people want to discuss the true crime stuff, and other people just want to say that they don't like somebody. And yeah, sometimes I get it too in milder ways, not so extreme, just more about spreading disinfo and so on. And Manny says, the guy admitted it all on tape. I even found the comic book he copied and gave it to Maury. LOL, paid by the cars. Laughable conspiratard BS. Oh yeah, I got that one a couple days ago, Manny. That's what they were saying. I guess they didn't like what you were saying for some reason. But, I mean, accusations are just going all across the spectrum. But one of the things, though, that both Manny and I kind of experience is we don't buy into the larger conspiracies, even if I talk about them. Even if I talk about them, like, well, I'm curious, what actually happened. And you can just leave it at that. What actually happened with the mystery? And someone's like, there's this vast conspiracy. All right, well, I want to hear what you have to say. And then you can find out that certain elements of it are just completely fabricated. And it turns out there is a real true crime story. It's just not as outrageous as everybody thought. And Melissa has something for us about the Zodiac Killer. And that's, what if the solutions to all the ciphers were contained in the wooden box found in central Ohio? The box was empty, but it said, enter as your own risk, as if there was something in it previously. Now, to you guys in the audience, you might not know what that means. Melissa, as I said, is the webmaster of ZodiacKillerBomb.com, and she also has the Facebook group Zodiac Killer and Me. And Melissa and her husband, Jeff, found a box that was in Ohio that had a bunch of different papers in it, and it's all arranged about the Zodiac Killer, and we're not really quite sure what to make of it. But Melissa does have a bunch of photos of that she can share. And then Billy the artist, going back to Manny's comments, the guy admitted it. And Manny says, I'm so used to it by now, it has zero effect anymore. Well, Manny, keep doing what you're doing. And I think, though, that Manny and I have talked about this a little bit, but the Zodiac Killer is an unsolved mystery. And I talk about that one a lot. D.B. Cooper is an unsolved mystery, but I don't know exactly what Manny would say, but the Son of Sam is supposed to have been a solved case, right? His name was David Berkowitz. And isn't that the end of it? That this guy Berkowitz was committing murders because he was an incel. I do mean that, an involuntary celibate who had some mental problems. And, he wasn't able to bond with people and form close relationships. And if you go back to the interview that Manny and I did together, we're just talking about how Berkowitz wanted to get caught, and he got caught because of a parking ticket, which he could have avoided. And, I mean, I invite you to check out the interview that I did with Manny one more time. So I think that this is just one thing where I'm not quite sure where and how and why the mystery of the Son of Sam case just has to keep going. Oh, but one thing that I've meant to do in the future is to do a big comparison between the letters that have been written by different haunting serial killers. And maybe we can even include the phone calls, because, say, for example, you got something such as the Zodiac Killer and the Zodiac's letters and ciphers, right? When you read the Son of Sam letters side by side, Berkowitz, I guess we can say he's the writer of those. I don't want to fuel the conspiracy. So when you read those Son of Sam letters, they are way more distorted. The language is all messed up. And it sounds like you're reading a letter from a paranoid schizophrenic. Whereas the Zodiac Killer's letters are mostly controlled. And it seems like the Zodiac Killer knows what he's talking about. But we also have letters that have been written by the Black Dahlia Avenger. How about Jack the Ripper in those letters, which quite possibly could be hoaxes? But how about, that for an example? And if you include phone calls, what about somebody like the Weepy Voice Killer, who would just talk in this very high-pitched, effeminate voice? I just killed a woman. And, there's just all types of different psychological elements that we could examine. But another serial killer that I frequently bring up, who was an example of someone who reported his own crimes was Kenneth Harrison, who was known as the Giggler, also known as the Boston Giggler. And I've been contacted by a couple of his family members after I did an episode on him, and they didn't say anything bad. But what I said in my episode from 2021 was that I was really quite curious if he actually committed the final murder, the murder of Kenneth Martin. Kenneth Harrison, Kenneth Martin, same first name. And earlier today, I got contacted by Kenneth Martin's niece. She just happened to listen to my episode and wrote out something and just said that to everybody's satisfaction, they think that Kenneth Harrison was responsible for that murder, and it's committed in a very different way. Like with Kenneth Martin's first crimes, he attacks somebody and then throws their body into the water, and he would make a call saying, "There's a body down in the water. I'm the Giggler." But with the murder of Kenneth Martin, he was strangled with a piece of twine, and his body was found in a subway tunnel. But they're like, Kenneth Harrison was able to direct people to where the body was, and a bunch of other details. But I've actually also been contacted by multiple members of Kenneth Harrison's family, and they say, "Oh yeah, about that comment you made, we think that he did it." And I'm like, all right, fair enough. It was just a suspicion that I had, but it seems like everybody coming from different sides thinks that he committed that crime. And I do thank the family members of both the people, especially the victim's family, for writing in and giving their thoughts on the crimes. But I think that this is just a very big example of how serial killers who take credit for their own murders are doing it in very different ways. We haven't even mentioned BTK yet, Dennis Rader, and he's definitely doing it in some type of sadistic, emotionally sadistic way too. Not only physical sadism, mind, torture, kill, but emotionally sadistic as well. Richard Mills says it does seem like serial killers are programmed assassins and may be connected in some cases. Well, Richard, how exactly would you mean that? Like, do you mean like they're programmed by the CIA, or that they have these types of traumatic experiences and people don't necessarily do a lot to try and stop them? And the more that I watch true crime documentaries, as well as the dramas, the biopics, any type of crime drama that is available to be, that streaming service that I always talk about is great for crime dramas. They show these things about how there's somebody who realizes that society is being mean to him, so he launches a revenge plot. And I was just watching the movie Copycat Killer from 1995, and that was with Sigourney Weaver and Holly Hunter. Was that right? Is that Holly Hunter that's in there? Oh, it's Sigourney Weaver plays one of them. There's another person who plays a detective, and that one is all about how somebody is learning these things from other serial killers, and they used real life examples: Albert DeSalvo, David Berkowitz, Ted Bundy, and they are showing how this person is concocting some type of serial killer plan for all of the reasons that I've just listed. Feels like he's rejected from society, wants to have power over people, and he's putting that plan into action by using the methods that he has obtained from the media. Now, you want to talk about brainwashing like that? All the time. Bring it on. And we even had a Zodiac killer copycat in the 1990s, Eddie Seda, the New York Zodiac killer, not to mention the Chinese Zodiac killer, who, well, at the very least, was just sort of a troll or something like that in 2022. But Eddie Seda was a real life serial killer, and he's doing it based on the model of the Zodiac. And some people use these real serial killer stories as inspirations, influences, by design. I have talked about this more than anyone else about the Zodiac killer, about how I believe that he was using Jack the Ripper as a template. And Josofo is here. Josofo says, "Manny, I've learned so much, not just about the Son of Sam, but also about investigating the historical true crime. Amazing work, Manny." Yeah, Manny, I used to watch his channel starting out with the true crime walk and talks, and then eventually I watched his podcasts and interviews, and a lot of good stuff over there. And Manny says, Berkey was massively influenced by others. He was a big time reader of detective magazines. A lot of these people are getting it from somewhere. And one sad thing is, not only the serial killers, but also the mass shooters can be learning about things and copycatting. And back to Richard's point, it does seem like the serial killers are programmed assassins and may be connected in some cases. And this is the stuff you're not supposed to talk about on YouTube, but Alex Jones, famously went on Piers Morgan, and then he was talking about gun control. And I'm not even going to get into that subject, but he just asked about why do these mass shootings occur in America? And what Alex Jones, of all people, said was every time there's a mass shooting, they put the killer's face on the television and they say, this is how he did it. This is the kind of gun he used. This is how he was able to get so many shots off. I just did an episode about Stephen Paddock and the Las Vegas shooting. All of that stuff is in the forefront. And it's almost as if they're just giving people a blueprint and a plan to commit mass shootings. And with serial killers, I've noticed that there's a very different sentiment because serial killers aren't always the subject of things like gun control and rules and regulations. What serial killers are also the subject of is trying to bring awareness so you know that your neighbor next door is not trying to kill you and so on. And I try to find justifications for talking about true crime all the time, bringing awareness to the number of serial killers that are in existence. When I was watching that movie, Copycat Killer, it was talking about how there was an estimated number of serial killers in America. And Sigourney Weaver's character said 35. She estimated there were 35 active serial killers in America. In 2024, 19 years later, I think it's much closer to 150. Those are just active serial killers, not retired people like the Zodiac, who's probably dying in some nursing home in the California desert. No, but like active serial killers. And Manny Grossman says that Berkowitz was inspired by the lipstick killer, and that was what influenced him to write on the walls. Some people use education constructively, other people use it destructively. And sometimes murderers who are not like mass shooters get pulled into these legal discussions. I did an Anything Goes Friday segment once about the Yorkshire crossbow killer, not the Yorkshire Ripper, but the Yorkshire crossbow killer. And he murdered a man named Shane Gilmer with a crossbow, of course. He actually lived in a duplex-like house, and he crawled across like the attic of the duplex, and he murdered a man with a crossbow. And, you know, it's a tragedy, but Shane Gilmer's widow was just on national television in the UK saying, we need to ban crossbows. And that's just an example of how you had someone who wasn't a mass shooter trying to use rules and regulations to solve the problem. A better way to solve the problem would be just if you could some way, somehow be like Professor Xavier in the X-Men and just get people to think in a different way. Can you do that? No. But can you try to get people to think in a different way? I sure hope so. Because until people stop having this type of violent and destructive need to destroy each other, it's always going to happen. It's always going to happen. And what a lot of people say is that everything that I have just said about this brainwashing stuff, it tells you the method. It tells you how and why they did it. It tells you some connecting factors. But there is another more important element, and that is that some people have bloodlust. Some people have violent tendencies. And yeah, I've met a lot of people that I didn't like over the years. I've never killed anyone. I met a lot of people who were jerks, and sometimes I didn't feel like I belonged to certain social groups, and I've never killed anyone. And I think almost every single person here, I hope every single person here has never killed anyone either. So there definitely is something else that is going on there. And it's not even a mental illness issue, because not all people who are mentally ill go on to commit murders. Like people who have mental disorders like schizophrenia or even like clinical depression, not all of them become violent. There also is something else there, that people have destructive tendencies, and there is a very big disregard for human behavior and human life and just caring about humanity in general. But ultimately, that's my conclusion for this episode. I think that's a good note to end on. Thank you so much to everybody who has listened to this live stream. And this was one where I thought it was going to be about 15 minutes. I was just going to talk to you about the DB Cooper episode coming out tomorrow, and as well as some of the updates for the channel, and say that I'm back in the Philippines, but I'll only be here for a short time. It ended up being over 50 minutes, but I love talking to you guys, and I love what you guys said in the chat. You really kept the discussion going. You were all amazing. Once again, you can hit the like button and subscribe if you want to follow along with content like this. And please tune in on Friday for the DB Cooper episode, Zodiac Monday, and Ripper Wednesday. Richard asked what time tomorrow. I'm going to try and upload it at 7 a.m. Eastern time, maybe 8 or 9 Eastern time. And it's going to be, and that's going to be done more like the traditional BBOR episode, podcast style, as opposed to a live stream. But anyway, thanks again. And until next time.